Hi. Okay, this is Olawale Oluwade, and I want to speak briefly on what I've titled "Why is Baba Silent?" Why is Olusegun Obasanjo? Why is he silent? I have been wondering and asking, where is President Obasanjo, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, in the maelstrom of critical issues threatening the Nigerian state? He has been uncharacteristically silent, quite so. And this is wholly out of character for the former military head of state and later on civilian president. He has the singular distinction of being unsparing of all his successors in office. So what's going on now? Going down memory lane, Obasanjo criticized IBB and described IBB's management of his political transition program from 85 to 93. That transition program that never ended. Obasanjo described this as a sham, which was intended, for self-perpetuation of IBB in office, and personally described IBB as a bull flaying about, in a China shop. Now, under the dreaded General Sani Abacha, who took over from IBB, who took over from the interim contraption put together by IBB of NS Shonekon, Abacha took over. Obasanjo was at it again, but he probably, didn't care, to read, no, he didn't receive nor care to read, if he did, the psychological profile of the object of his pungent criticisms, and understandably so, because Abacha was a junior officer in the military when Obasanjo held sway. So, as usual, Obasanjo relied on his air of superiority and then this larger-than-life personality and also untouchability as cover for him to go on, criticizing and all of that. Well, Obasanjo paid dearly for this grievous error of judgment. General Sani Abacha had no respect for personality, hierarchy or seniority in the military, and didn't brook nor tolerated criticisms from whoever. He didn't tolerate criticisms, dissent, or challenge to his totalitarian regime's actions. If he didn't kill you, he ran you out of town. He was a man who didn't he had no he didn't take prisoners. Either he ran you out of town or he killed you. Now, before I could say Jack, Obasanjo was arrested on trumped up coup plot charges and was sentenced to life imprisonment. And not just himself, his deputy, Major General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua, was sentenced to death, never came out of prison alive. Likewise, Senator Shehu Sani, and then also Senator Chris Anyao, a lady, and all of that. So many of them, But Obasanjo was saved just by the deft hand of Providence. Now, move on to Abdulsalami Abubakar. Obasanjo couldn't critique Abdulsalami Abubakar, head of state from 98 to 99. In fact, Abubakar handed over to Obasanjo. Why? A quick succession of carefully orchestrated events. First, he was in jail, like I said, under Abacha, he was in jail when Abdulsalami took over. And then later on, he was released by Abdulsalami Abubakar. And then third, he was installed as the first president in this Fourth Republic from 99. They quickly arranged an election and then installed Obasanjo as president. And the trio of people who installed him, who did the arrangee election and all of that, were Abdulsalami Abubakar himself, the incumbent head of state then, and then of course the master arranger, the master manipulator and master arranger himself, General Babangida, and then of course General T.Y. Danjuma. All of these they're all Obasanjo's boys in the military, so they all arranged to put him there. So that was what saved him, and that was why I couldn't criticize Abdulsalami Abubakar. Now, moving on from Yar'Adua, who Obasanjo personally staked everything to install as his successor in 2007, Umaru Yar'Adua, and then Goodluck Jonathan, who took over from Yar'Adua when Yar'Adua passed, and then later on President Muhammadu Buhari. Obasanjo didn't just criticize them. He added to his arsenal of criticisms lettering. He would write long letters, 4 or 5 pages, and making justifications for his acerbic criticisms of this lot. And then he would say all sort of things, make all sort of wild allegations, like he said Goodluck had retained the services of a killer squad and all of those kind of stuff, So he terribly attacked all these guys, criticized them for bad governance and all of that, Now, if you compare President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration so far, 3 years now, if by all metrics of measuring performance of any government, Tinubu's administration has been anything but disastrous in all ramifications. Comparing life under life of people and security of life and people under Goodluck Jonathan, Yaradua, Buhari to Tinubu, it is like comparing death to life. I go back again. Why is Obasanjo silent? Why is former President Obasanjo, why is he silent? Because things are worse, terribly so, compared to all the previous governments. There are many Nigerians who would love to go back to the days of Jonathan or even Buhari, because we could eat, people could transport, people could travel under Buhari. Now, let's get into the realm of Tito Tato. That is rumor mongering. That's what we do as journalists. We hear stuff and then it becomes rumors until it becomes real. A little bird had whispered in my ears a couple of weeks ago that Baba Obasanjo has been won over, or put bluntly, compromised. And that the key bait in the hook being the promise to shoehorn President Obasanjo's daughter, Senator Dr. Yabo Obasanjo, as the next governor of Ogun State. I was highly skeptical but retained a healthy level of intelligent curiosity when I heard this. Then, suddenly, I noticed Dr. Yabo Obasanjo began making the usual media rounds aspirant or candidates make, but I was still unconvinced. Now, to be fair, she is highly qualified to be governor or even president. She's a 59-year-old former senator, Ogun State senator, representing Ogun Central from 2007 to 2011. She's a doctor of veterinary medicine, an academic, an Ivy League educated epidemiologist from Cornell University. So she's eminently qualified. But why wasn't I convinced of this rumor? Well, almost every informed Ogun State citizen, such as myself, I'm a citizen of Ogun State. Every informed citizen of Ogun State knows the seat of governor in 2027 has more or less practically been allotted, to frontline senator representing Ogun West, Senator Solomon Olamilekan Adiola, popularly called Yayi, who is currently serving as the chairman of the powerful Senate Committee on Appropriations. So that's why I'm skeptical, because we all know Yayi is the next governor, bar any unforeseen, maybe death or whatever, God forbid. Then boom, my mind changed. First, I saw firsthand on Saturday, April 3rd, just a couple of days ago, in Iperu during the opening ceremony of the Ogun State Cargo Airport. What on the surface might appear solid evidence of why Baba didn't just grace, because Baba Obasanjo was there, and he didn't just grace that event. That alone would have been, if that was just it, that would have been surprising enough. But then he donned the Ashoebi, that's a celebratory attire, group of people from my part of the country wear for events and celebrations. He wore it, and that celebratory attire had the image, the picture of Bola Tinubu on it. That was a shocker for me. Now, add to this event over the weekend, just a couple of days ago, I saw Senator Yabo Obasanjo visiting President Tinubu, I think Easter Monday, at his home in Lagos. That's his one, and then she confirmed to reporters that yes, she's contesting for the primaries of the APC governorship. And then, in quick succession, Senator Olamilekan Adiola, came out boldly to tell his teaming supporters that they should stop mounting billboards all over Ogun State, that when the time comes, he will let them know. Now, I hasten to state, all of this says nothing really conclusively. After all, Chief Obasanjo is perhaps Ogun State's most important citizen alive. Is a globally renowned one to boot. And, Obasanjo was a guest of the state governor and the government of Ogun State. That's what they would say. Just as the president also, President Tinubu, was likewise invited as special guest of honor to commission the spanking new airport. So we don't have to read much into that. However, I am a lifelong student of power, politics, and its seedy machinations, or underbellies. Senator Adiola may still, who knows, emerge the APC candidate and later on governor in 2027. So I might be wrong, and I admit that here, And like I said, these are all just conjectures, thinking aloud. But if against all the odds and expectations or permutations, Senator Dr. Yabo Obasanjo emerged first candidate of APC and later on governor of Ogun State come 2027, then you know why Baba Obasanjo has been eerily silenced while the company went under. The master strategist found his target's Achilles tendon and stuck, his dagger in it. If it's any consolation to students of history, we know from ancient military strategists, there are no permanent enemies in war or power or politics, but only permanent interest. And whenever there is a convergence, of personal interest of either to sworn adversaries, then expect detente, or amity, just expect, everything to, become normalized and all of that. Ultimately, whatever is hidden shall soon come to light. It's only a matter of time. So let us wait patiently. Consider this particular intervention as just part one of this. It's just part one. So I urge you, get your popcorns and drinks ready. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.